Hello everyone, and as always, welcome back to my channel. Or if it's your first time, welcome to my channel. My name is Marlene and I talk about eating disorder recovery and everything related to healing the relationship with your own body, with food, and with movement. And today we're going to talk about such an important topic, and I don't really know why I never talked about it before on this channel, honestly, but now is the time. We're going to talk about eating disorders and relationships, romantic relationships. No matter if you are in a relationship or not, this video might be helpful for you because you're going to see that it's not only about relationships. You're going to understand in a minute what I mean about that. I personally have been in a relationship when I developed my eating disorder. I was left because I had developed an eating disorder. I was single for a long time in my eating disorder because I had an ED mainly. I was dating when I had an eating disorder. I was dating in recovery, and I am now fully recovered and in a relationship again. So as you can see, I've been through a lot of different stages. I've been in a lot of different situations, and working with my clients, there are certain dynamics that come up over and over again when it comes to a partner, when it comes to a husband, and those dynamics can be challenging and they can be helpful. We want to talk about those dynamics and how you can learn to cope with them, no matter if you're single or in a relationship. When we talk about an active eating disorder, it oftentimes kind of becomes like the third person in the relationship because the eating disorder will always win. So, of course, that can lead to, on the one hand, maybe control mechanisms where either the partner just constantly wants to make sure that you're eating enough or that you're not engaging in behaviors. For some people, it can even go the other way, that people start to control their partner's eating behaviors. And it can actually show up in two different ways. Some people start to control that their partner is not eating too much. Some people want to make sure that their partner is always eating more than them so that they feel better about themselves. Either way, of course, those dynamics can be extremely challenging in a relationship because they are not healthy dynamics. That doesn't mean that you can't work through it, but it's very important to be aware of that. And for a lot of people, that means like really working on the independency instead of codependency. Because what we oftentimes see, and we're also going to talk about that topic in regards to recovery in a minute, is that there will be some kind of codependency. I am only eating when you're eating. Oh, my partner says he's not hungry. Okay, then I'm not eating either. And I even saw that with other people sometimes. I even saw that with family members, for instance, or with friends, where it was like, oh, if they're not eating, I'm definitely not going to eat. And those patterns are so harmful because they can be so hard to break through. And oftentimes when we're in the depth of an eating disorder, we don't really want to work on them because it's kind of like just how the eating disorder shows up. And at the same time, especially when we're working towards recovery, it is so important to work through them. Of course, emotional unavailability can also play a big role. A lot of people with eating disorders have tendencies to be emotionally less available. On the one hand, because when we're malnourished, we normally don't really have access to our emotions. But even people that are not malnourished in their eating disorder oftentimes still use the eating disorder as a numbing mechanism. But also eating disorders can be connected with a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. And the more guilt and shame we feel, the more we're going to isolate ourselves. And the isolation, of course, also happens because we kind of want to be able to do our eating disorder habits, to like follow those eating disorder rules in private and without being disturbed. So that was actually one of the reasons why when I had an eating disorder, for the majority of the time I was single, because I just wanted to be able to do everything how my eating disorder wanted me to do it, to not have somebody around, to not be disturbed in my day-to-day routines. And that kind of kept me very isolated, but the eating disorder was there, so I didn't even feel that isolated. And of course, another part is intimacy. I'm not only talking about sexual intimacy, but that does play a big part too. When we are already disconnected from our bodies, when we struggle with body image, when we struggle with our bodies overall, which is the case for the majority of people with eating disorders, not for everyone, but even when we don't on the surface level struggle, for instance, with our body image, eating disorders normally lead to some kind of disconnection from the body, because when I'm, for instance, malnourished, or when I'm using food to cope with my emotions, it will more or less automatically lead to a disconnection from the body. And that can disturb intimacy, that can make it harder to even be open to dating, for instance. I remember, for instance, I, on the one hand, was kind of ashamed because part of me knew I don't have a healthy body. And I also didn't really want anyone to like my sick body because that would make me feel like, oh, if they like my sick body, then it can't be that bad. So if I would ever choose to recover, but they already like my sick body, it's kind of like a conflict. So that was my main point behind it. And all those things don't mean that you can't have an eating disorder and still have a partner. I know a lot of people, a lot of my clients that have partners that were extremely supportive in their eating disorders, in their recoveries, and those people can work through it. But those are very typical dynamics that make it just harder for a relationship. But as every relationship has their issues, an eating disorder doesn't mean that you can't have a relationship, but it's important to be aware of those patterns and to also work on the communication, to try to be as open as possible. And of course, eventually, once you start to choose recovery, to be even more open with that and to talk to your partner. So a lot of people that choose recovery still struggle with a lot of feelings and a lot of fears. What if my partner all of a sudden doesn't like me when I put on weight? What if my partner is going to be embarrassed by me? What if I'm going to be the person that loses control and my partner is still looking a certain way? Those are very, very common fears. And those are not necessarily fears because that's going to be the case, but those are fears because that's what's connected to the eating disorder. And one of the biggest fears for many people when they choose recovery is to cope with a changing body. And that normally the body image and the fear of a changing body also oftentimes is connected to other people. Not only to other people, also a lot to ourselves, but the fear of being judged, rejected, not liked anymore, or even embarrassing our partner can be extremely overwhelming. Another part is that as we progress with our recovery, oftentimes we see identity shifts. Oftentimes there are things that are coming up more, maybe even certain emotions. Maybe we need more rest. Maybe we are more open to going out again. It can be either way, right? And those identity shifts can kind of shake a relationship, but not necessarily in a bad way, but they can be challenging. It can feel for a partner like, oh, what is going on? Who is that person? Like, what is going on? What is happening? And that's why communication is so important. Let your partner know what you're feeling. Let your partner know if you don't know what you're feeling. If you're going through this and you don't even know what you're feeling. One minute you're crying and the other one you're happy. One day you think, oh my God, recovery is great. And the next time you sit crying in front of the mirror. Let them know, because that's the only way that they can support you. But also let them know that your recovery is not their responsibility. And one of the things that I see the most in clients, especially those who are in relationships or who are married, is that connection between what does my partner eat and what do I eat. A lot of clients, a lot of people in recovery experience either extreme hunger or just need to eat more, need to work on incorporating certain foods more, need to work on the fear of sugar, of carbs, of fats, needing to eat more. And no matter if you have a partner that has a very specific way of eating in terms of like not eating sugar, not eating certain foods, working out a lot, which can make it harder, and I'm not going to lie about this. Doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it can make it harder for you if your partner is very focused on those things. Or if you have a partner that doesn't even care about that, but that might still be very much in touch with their body. So sometimes you might need to eat something and your partner might say, no, but I'm not hungry. And for a lot of people, that feels offensive. I know so many people that immediately react like, okay, so you don't want to support me. Or, okay, if you don't eat, then I can't eat. And I don't blame you for that. That reaction is the eating disorder speaking. That is not you being a bad person. That is still the eating disorder speaking. That doesn't mean that you should continue thinking that way, because in the end, it's only going to harm yourself more. As long as you have that codependency, that enabling, so I will only eat when my partner eats. I will only eat certain things if my partner eats certain things. That might feel more helpful in the beginning, but I'm never the biggest fan. I have clients who say, well, my family member or my friend told me, okay, we will eat every meal together and always will eat the same. That might sound great in the beginning, but if you think about it, you will never really learn to make your own decisions and to make actual recovery decisions, because it's always connected to someone else. And that's what we call enabling. if you are in a situation, for instance, where your partner is very, very active, is working out a lot, is maybe not eating certain food groups, it can feel extremely unfair. It can feel like, oh my God, if my partner wouldn't be like that, it would be so much easier. And I agree, it probably would be easier. And I don't want to pretend that it wasn't helpful for me to, for instance, have certain people in my life that just really didn't give an F about this. I have some friends that made it just so much easier for me to eat because they didn't care. At the same time, if you learn to recover, even in a situation like that, even when people around you are very occupied with a topic, then you're going to be so much stronger in your recovery. If we recover in a bubble where everyone is enabling us, it's going to be very hard to ever learn how to make recovery choices outside of that bubble. So you can even see it as a good thing, even though it makes it harder in that moment. And you need to challenge yourself to really learn to think, this is for me, this is for myself. My partner didn't have an eating disorder, so his way is completely different. I can't compare myself to my partner because for the last month or even years, I had this eating disorder. So now I have to go another way because I basically went another way before. You can even see it as relearning, closeness, awareness, but also autonomy new, and that's a good thing. A lot of my clients, for instance, tell me when they progress in their eating disorder recovery that they feel a little bit more autonomous again. They feel like they are not as dependent on their partners anymore, also in other ways, not only in ways of the eating. And that's a good thing because you're still your own person. So my biggest tips for everyone who is in a relationship and who maybe struggles even with their recovery because of that, because there's a constant comparison or because they have that big, big fear of being left, being rejected, embarrassing their partner, or you name it. My biggest thing is, on the one hand, open communication. Try to talk to them. Try to share what you are going through. Show them videos. Show them this video. Make sure they understand what recovery means, and maybe also that you're not crazy, that you're not trying to control them, but that this is the fear speaking. Also, I would always suggest to address those certain fears. I know that a lot of people will have partners that will tell them, hey, I really don't care how much weight you gain. And the fear will still be there, right? There's that rational thought and that rational explanation can only go so far. But it will still make a difference to be willing and to be able to share with your partner the fears that you have, maybe also about the relationship. Like, hey, I'm afraid you're not going to be attracted to me anymore if I gain weight. I'm afraid you're going to be ashamed of me if I gain weight, because then you can work through it. And part of that is also to learn that your appearance and part of that is also that recovery is about so much more than just a changing body. I mean, yes, there will probably be a lot of partners that tell you like, hey, I'm going to be so happy when you gain weight. It's probably going to look amazing, but you shouldn't even depend too much on that part because you don't want to only focus on the appearance. For instance, a lot of people told me, and that was when I started recovery, I was not in a relationship. I started dating when I was still in recovery, but a lot of people that I dated then didn't know the sick me. But a lot of people, like just friends and family members that knew me when I was sick and then that saw me going through recovery, one of the times in my life where I felt the most unattractive and where I had the hardest and worst issues with my body, actually. And they still told me, wow, you're glowing so much more. You have more light in your eyes again. And I remember how those compliments honestly confused me, but I was like, oh, so even though I feel so unattractive and I gained so much weight and I feel like I'm not worthy of love right now because my self-worth was also very much connected to my eating disorder, and I had to really learn to detach that. I was like, oh, okay, so it really doesn't seem to make that big of a difference for people that I gained weight. It's actually more about how I feel and how I radiate maybe and how I have more energy again. And those can also be things to keep in mind. And again, the communication with your partner is important, but without relying on your partner to, take care of your recovery. If you communicate with your partner, it should never be like, hey, I'm only going to eat if you eat. Or You have to make sure that I'm eating all the time. It can be helpful to have some accountability, especially in the beginning. Just tell them, okay, hey, this is the plan. I want to make sure to eat certain foods or to eat that amount or whatever your individual recovery way is. But at the same time, it shouldn't switch into that enabling and codependency anymore, where you're only going to eat if your partner reminds you of that. I hope that makes sense. I hope it's helping you guys. Please let me know in the comments what your experience with that topic is, and I will see you in the next one.